So there's been a lot of evidence left behind by our ancestors that show us the African presence in the Americas prior to the arrival of white people. And one of the things that I've showed you many times is the headdresses that were worn by the Cherokees specifically. These headdresses actually originated in Egypt. So I wanted to show you the headdresses that are worn here by the natives. These headdresses can actually be found in Egypt as well. And I also want to point out the fact that this woman is a queen native to North America, and she's also holding a lotus flower just like the Egyptians.
There was a man named JP who was married to a Mexican lady named Myra. She was of Mayan blood. I was back in that same chamber just before talking about Sautet. She kind of grabbed and said, "Stephen, come here, I have to show you something." "What?" She said, "This is a Mayan headdress.
Sure,
This is not native Commission. Yep. It's quetzal feathers. It looks like here's the priest. He's having himself disguised as a Mayan. So maybe there was a contact."
So I want you to pay attention to what he just said. He said that the high priest is disguising himself as a Mayan, and that maybe there was contact. First of all, the high priest of Amen is wearing the headdress with the ram's horn to the left. And the same man, he is not disguising himself as a Mayan. He is showing himself as a Mayan also. Remember that Maya, who was a Mayan from Chichen Itza, is buried in Egypt. And we know that Maya was the high priest of Amen. So here we have an Egyptian showing us that he's the high priest of Amen, but he's also a Mayan. And remember that the records that we have on Maya that were left in Egypt state that he was the leader in the festival of Amen. So he would have been present during the festival of Amen that took place in Egypt. So this particular relief is very important because it shows us the connection between the Mayans and the Egyptians, and this is actually located not too far from the tomb of Maya. So I told you guys in part 2 about this Egyptian alabaster egg that was found in the Grand Canyon. So I just want to give you a little bit of background information. And this Egyptian alabaster egg was actually found in the Grand Canyon in 1918 by a woman named Laura Sloan. And she passed down this artifact to her great-granddaughter named Kathy Kincaid. And this is part of Kathy Kincaid's interview that she gave in 1993.
That the markings on this egg was King Tut's high priest signature on one side of the rock and the cartouche of his name on the other. Now keep in mind that they didn't break into King Tut's tomb until 1922, yet this Egyptian alabaster egg was found in Pocatello, Idaho in 1918 before they ever knew anything about King Tut. So just the two things was found, the egg and that rock?
Yeah.
Okay.
That whatever it is, I have no idea.
Huh. Wow.
The cutest looking thing you ever saw, but it's pretty, so I kept it.
Yeah, really.
I'm amazed that I kept these things, too. I threw them in my dresser drawer. I was young when she gave them to me.
Oh, really?
So I just kind of threw them in my drawer thinking, oh, how cute.
Yeah, that is amazing you kept it, because I know all that stuff I had, I've thrown away.
Well, you know how I was sitting in the dentist's office and reading the Smithsonian magazine.
Uh-huh.
And an article just came out about the opening of King Tut's tomb.
Oh, uh-huh.
And I saw the same cartouche on all of his artifacts that was on my egg. And
Wow.
that's the only way I ever knew anything about it, or that it even was Egyptian, but it is definitely Egyptian alabaster. So how it got to Idaho, I probably will never know.
Yeah.
And we can look at this Egyptian artifact that was actually found in Colorado. This is an Egyptian scarab. And we can also look at the fact that Tutankhamen's daughter came to Europe. And we know that this was over 3,300 years ago. So we can always pinpoint when Tutankhamun and Nefertiti came to the Grand Canyon, what time period that was, because we know that Akhenaten's daughter came to Europe after Tutankhamun was buried in Egypt. So we know that they all came here around the same time. And here we have hieroglyphs in Egypt of corn, and we know that corn is native to South America. So then we have the yin and yang concept. And this concept comes from ginseng. Ginseng that is grown in China is actually called the yang. And ginseng that is grown in North America is called the yin. And the yang represents the male and the yin represents the female. So the yin and yang concept comes from ginseng that was grown in North America and in China. So we always have to pay attention to the flora and the fauna that can be found all over the world. And this is an important part of studying the African presence in the Americas. So to give you a few examples of some flora that has been found in North and South America, but actually comes from Asia or Africa or vice versa. Just to give you a few examples, cotton is from Africa, but it's been grown in North and South America for thousands of years. And peanuts are from Peru and Brazil and South America, but they've been grown in Africa and India for thousands of years. And then we have the rubber tree. The rubber tree is native to South America, but it's been grown in Asia for thousands of years as well. So we can see the connection between Asia and the Americas and Africa. And this connection has been going on for thousands of years. And we can just see this connection through the crops. And all of this took place prior to the arrival of white people just 500 years ago. So to give you one good example of fauna, which represents the animal kingdom, there are many examples to show you, but I want to focus on one, which is the Mexican hairless dog. So I have a lot to show you about this dog, and before moving forward, I want to make one correction. In part 2, I stated that the Mexican hairless dog is native to South America or originates in South America. And this actually is not true. This Mexican hairless dog, although is classified as a Mexican hairless dog, and many people have actually documented that it was from South America, the truth is that this dog is from China. So this is actually just another important clue that shows us the connection between the inhabitants of Asia who migrated thousands of years ago, or who also inhabited thousands of years ago, South America. And this dog, this Mexican hairless dog, or whatever it goes by in Asia, whatever name it's called in Asia, is a very important clue to connecting the Egyptians in Africa, the Cushites in Asia, and the inhabitants of South America and North America. So the Mayans and the Aztecs used to make toys of this dog. So they used to make a lot of, I guess what would be considered toys or ornaments of this particular dog in South America. And there's a lot of evidence of that that's been left behind. But then there's also evidence of this dog is actually documented by the first explorers of North America. The inhabitants of North America had these dogs as well. So we know that this dog, although it originated in Asia, also inhabited North and South America, along with the people who inhabited North and South America as well. So as I've said, the Mayans, the Aztec, the Inca, the Olmecs, all of these ancient civilizations of South America, they would make these toy dogs. And these particular toy dogs are so important, and the Mexican hairless dog is so important for what I'm about to show you next. So before moving forward, I want to explain a few things. Recently, I had sent some information to Clyde Winters. And Clyde Winters, for those of you who don't know, is a researcher, and he focuses on African studies. And I appreciate his research, and although I don't agree necessarily with all of his beliefs, I appreciate his work. So I had sent him some information because he had recently did this video on the Queen of Punt, and I had some information on Hatshepsut and her journey to the land of Punt. So not too long after I had sent him this information, I was working on the Mayans were Egyptians videos, and as I was doing that, I came across what I had sent to Clyde Winters, and I noticed that one of the things that Hatshepsut had brought back from the land of Punt was one of these Mexican hairless dog toys. And these toys were made in South America. So this right here is actually an image from the Queen of Punt that I sent to Clyde Winters. So the top and bottom images are of the Queen of Punt, and the middle image is of the army that came with Hatshepsut when she came to the land of Punt. And the Queen of Punt is greeting her upon her arrival. And when I seen the Mexican hairless dog, it prompted me to research this further. So I wanted to look at all of the items that Hatshepsut brought back from the land of Punt. So before I move forward, I just want to say that nobody knows where the land of Punt is. And many scholars today, the majority of them, if not all of them, will tell you that the land of Punt is within Africa. But remember what I've explained to you, that North and South America and what we know today as the Americas used to be part of Africa. So Hatshepsut not only brought back toy dogs from Mexico or South America, but she also brought back rabbits. And rabbits are actually native to Spain. In fact, the Cushites, who inhabited all of Europe, called Spain the land of the rabbits. And then we have the mirth trees that Hatshepsut brought back from the mysterious land of Punt. And according to Egyptologists, the mirth trees that were brought back to Egypt from Hatshepsut were the first successful transplant of this particular tree in history. But in fact, this particular plant had already been transplanted for the first time in history by the Moors, who brought this plant from the Canary Islands and transplanted it in Spain. So far, Hatshepsut returned to Egypt with rabbits from Spain, mirth trees from Spain, and Mexican hairless dog toys that we know came from South America. And if we look at these artifacts that are housed in Spain, in a museum in Spain, and according to the museum in Spain, they don't know how these artifacts made their way to Spain. But these are artifacts of Hatshepsut and her journey to the mysterious land of Punt, and these artifacts are found in Spain, the very same location where we can find the rabbits and the mirth trees that Hatshepsut brought back from the mysterious land of Punt. So you'll notice that when we look at Pangaea, we can see that there is no Europe. So before the breaking apart of the continents that we know today, we know that all of the land masses were connected, but when we look at this map of Pangaea, we see that Europe does not exist, only Eurasia. So what is Europe? Europe is the landmass that's in between Eurasia and North America. And now, of course, it's all separated, but this means that Europe, as we know today, didn't exist before Pangaea. It was still connected to Africa. So when we look at Europe in relation to Africa, when we see that the Moors came out of Africa and they would have traveled to the land of Europe when they settled in all of Europe and were inhabiting and ruling Europe. When we look at the proximity of Europe in relation to Africa, we see that they would have traveled over one body of water. So when we look at Europe in relation to Africa and we see how close it is, not only that, we can see how close Spain is to Africa. So traveling to Spain, when we look at the Moors traveling from Africa to Spain, this would have been traveling over one body of water. So if we look at the symbol for punt, the actual original symbol for punt, known by the Egyptians, we can see that it's showing in order to get to punt, we're traveling over one body of water. And the Egyptians didn't call punt punt. This is something that the Europeans called it in their translations of the Egyptian language. But the actual name for punt is wenet. And punt is shown as traveling over one body of water, as I said. And remember, as I've shown you in the beginning of these videos, I showed you that the lady of the house of Weret, which was the mother of Maya, Weret, or the symbol for Weret, which represents South America, is shown just as the symbol for punt, which is wenet, but it is shown with two bodies of water to travel over. So if we look at the maps that I've shown here, if you look at the actual land of Punt, which represents Wenet, is in Europe. This represents all of Europe, but particularly Spain as being the capital. So we know that Hatshepsut traveled to Wenet, or Punt, and she came back with rabbits and mirth trees from the land of Punt. And we also know that she came back with the Mexican hairless dogs. And as you can see, that if you're traveling from Africa to Europe, you're traveling over one body of water. But if you are traveling from Africa to South America, you're traveling over two bodies of water. One location, being Europe, was called Wenet, and the other location of South America was called Weret. And as I've said, when we look at Pangaea, Europe does not exist. It is part of Africa originally, just like North and South America. So now I want to show you something that connects the Mayans, the Aztecs, and the Olmecs to the Kushites who inhabited Spain, or all of Europe as well. So here we have Mayan glyphs showing us rabbits. So the Aztecs have a lot of artifacts showing us rabbits, and the Mayans as well. So when we know that, as I've explained, rabbits are native to Spain, the Kushites called Spain the land of the rabbits, yet the Mayans and the Aztecs, the civilizations of South America, had rabbits as well. So this shows us the connection between the two civilizations. And I wanted to briefly recap on something that I showed you earlier in this video, because it shows us the connection between the Egyptians, the Mayans, and the Kushites of Europe. Here we have the man that is shown. He's a high priest of Egypt, and he is shown wearing the headdress of the high priest of Amen, and he's also shown wearing a headdress of the Mayans. But what I noticed about this is that if you notice the symbol that is next to him, he is showing the land of Wenet. This is very important because this represents Europe. So here we have an Egyptian with the headdress of Amen, also shown with the headdress of a Mayan priest. And he is showing us that he's not from the land of Weret, where the Mayans are from, but he's from the land of Wenet, which is the land of Punt, or Europe. So this would connect the Mayans to Europe as well, or the people who inhabited Europe, being the Kushites, are connected to the Mayans as well. So something else that shows us the connection between the Cushites who inhabited Europe and the Egyptians who were buried in Egypt. We can look at the greyhound dog. The greyhound dog originates in England, but the mummified remains of greyhound dogs have been found in Egyptian tombs dating back to 3,000 years ago. So we know that the Egyptians were traveling between Africa and Europe for thousands of years. So I want to leave you with the serpent kings. The serpent or snake rulers of South America were represented by the snake. Now remember that I said according to the Egyptian records, Weret, who is the mother of Maya, who was a Mayan but he was buried in Egypt, his mother Weret, she was the lady or the queen of the house of Weret, and Weret is South America. So according to the Egyptian records, when an Egyptian king was ordained, Weret was present. So this is why if we look at the coronation of Horemheb, if we look at the coronation of Ramses, even during the time of Thutmose, Weret was present. She was present during the coronation of the kings because she represented, according to the Egyptians, the cobra that was on the head of the Egyptian kings. She also represented magic or Heka. So she is the embodiment of the snake or the power of the snake, and the power of the snake represents the power of Ra. So if we look at all of the snake kings of South America, the Mayans, the Aztec, the Inca, the Olmecs, and so forth, they represent the power of the snake or the mother goddess. And this symbol is called the Wadjet. So according to the Egyptian records, Weret, who is Maya's mother, who is the queen or the goddess and ruler of South America, and she is represented by the snake on the heads of the kings of Egypt, and this symbol is called the Wadjet symbol. So her name is Weret. She is the ruler of Weret, which is South America, and she is represented by the Wadjet symbol, which is on the heads of the kings. So as I've said, North and South America and Canada are all one landmass. They are all connected. But modern scholars today tell us that the Mayans and the Aztec, the Olmecs, the Inca civilizations of South America, they try to convince us that somehow these people never inhabited North America. And they try to convince the inhabitants of North America that the black people who are inhabiting North America today arrived in slave ships, all to cover up the fact that they existed prior to the arrival of white people. And this is why the snake mounds of North America are so important, because they prove that the so-called snake kings, or the rulers of South America, it proves that these inhabitants, known as the Olmecs, the Mayans, the Inca, and the Aztec, they also inhabited North America as well, proving that we were already here. So if we look at the serpent mounds that can be found in all of North America, many people are familiar with the serpent mounds that can be found in Ohio. But a lot of people are not familiar with the fact that there are serpent mounds that are found all throughout North America, all over the United States. So this is another serpent mound that can be found in North America, located in Louisiana, and many more that can be found in California, Alabama, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Kansas, Kentucky, Minnesota, New York, North Dakota, and many more states within North America. So we have evidence of Weret, Maya's mother, who is the snake queen of the Americas. She is the snake on the headdress of the kings. And we can look at all of the serpent mounds found within North America. and the Mayan and the Aztec and the Inca and the Olmec serpent kings of South America. This snake artifact to the right actually is from the Olmecs. So the first snake kings were the Olmecs, and the Olmecs were Cushites. Nevertheless, we can look at all of the evidence left behind by our ancestors, and we can begin to put together everything and look at the big picture and finally learn the truth about who we are without the indoctrination of religion, but by simply examining the facts. So right now I'm working on the final part of my research that I'll present in part 4. And I still have so much more to show you guys, so stay tuned for part 4.